hardest people to go to are the ones where like I'm like, yo, this is what's going on at work right now. This is
Hmm.
how I feel. What do you think I should do? And they tell you to do the thing you don't want to do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, or that person's like, nah, go back and apologize.
Apologize for that email you wrote.
Yeah, and forgive them. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. No, I want to tell
Hmm.
them off so they know how I feel. Like, that's what I really want to do. Yeah, and so like I think
Send.
Yo, welcome back to the Vibes Daily podcast. It is day 239 of our year-long series we have titled Devoted, where we are journeying through the entire Bible from cover to cover, from Genesis to Revelation. You have joined us in the book of Jeremiah, and we are so glad to have you back with us as we begin another week of reading. I am back with my wife, Victoria, who is here with us again as we complete the book of Jeremiah this week. We'll also get one of his writings called Lamentation.
Yeah.
We'll finish all of that by the end of this week before moving on to another prophet. But just before we get into our reading, as we do each week, just want to start off our conversation with a quick question that kind of gets us started and going. Really just kind of a piggyback off of some of our reading from last week. One of the things that we came out of after chapters 21 through 37 was Jeremiah preparing these people that would go into exile to this difficult situation to just kind of get ready for it, prepare for it. And while they're there, get comfortable, get the most out of it, build houses, have babies, all those kind of things. But yeah, just curious, have you had your own situation, your own circumstance or season in life where you felt like you were going into a really challenging season, like an exile or deportation, however you want to kind of call what happened to the Judeans, and felt like you had to be challenged to thrive in that difficult situation. Yeah, has that ever happened to you? And if so, what happened?
Yeah, I think the first instance that sticks out to me was when we moved back in with my parents.
Mm.
Well, I moved back in, but you moved in for the first time, right?
Mhm.
When we had Naomi, she had just turned 1. I was pregnant with Blake. I was probably like 6-7 months pregnant with Blake already.
Mhm.
And at that time it did seem like we no longer had our promised land of like our own place and with our own family, moving in with my parents. And it was also the place where I fell into postpartum depression, right? And that season was like rough, and to no one's fault. Like, we had our second child, I experienced it again for the second time. It was just like more intense, right? And I think that whole season of just living there, really, like, it really matured me. It helped me deal with postpartum depression, like once we had our third child, even better, right?
Yeah.
It allowed me at that point to even, like, while we were at that house, I feel like I cultivated my spiritual gifts like a lot more. Really God like revealed them to me, found a mentor that like helped me and matured me in that way. And so that was really pivotal for me, because when we did get to our own place, and we were staying there to like save for our own first house, but when we actually got to our own home that we owned on our own, like, that place was different. Like, we went through a postpartum season and it was rough, but it didn't last that long, right? Like, that depressive state, it didn't really stick and last, because I had like gained tools at my parents' house of like how to deal with it.
Mhm.
And then eventually was able to write, a book about it that helped too, like things I never thought would happen
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
So definitely saw some maturation happen from just thinking about this before when we were in Ontario on Plum Street, right?
Mhm.
Versus when we moved into our home in Corona. Like, I feel like we were two completely different people.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good one. That one hadn't come to mind, so that's a good one. I mean, I'd probably just say, the most recent one was obviously just moving out here, and it's kind of a little bit of what we talked about last week.
Yeah.
But I think compounded with that was probably the season I dealt with my mom's illness, kind of in that season. So like, you know, I tell the story often that like the day we listed our home, or the day after we listed our home in California, was a day that I found out that my mom had cancer. And so like that our move and like her battle with cancer kind of happened simultaneously. Like that journey was at the same time. And it really challenged me a lot in my faith and what I believed about God, and what I believed he was capable of, and what I believe whether he was sovereign, and like what he would decide to do. And even just walking through that with her, I had the privilege of her moving down here to where I got to spend a lot more time with her than I normally got to, just because we had lived once we moved out and lived with my dad. Like we would see each other for periods of time, but not necessarily nearly as long as we did kind of that last year. But even to just walk through that with her and hear her perspective and perception over how she felt about that illness, and trying to fight, and whether she would fight, things of that nature, just and just her joy. I mean, she's a woman of God, and she was somebody that really kind of kept the forefront of like, man, God is in control. He can, he will, but if he doesn't, like, I get to meet my savior type of thing. And so like, I don't know, just that whole journey was definitely a season where like in the midst of that, I still had to like learn a new job. We had to buy a house.
Yeah.
We had to, we were pregnant, preparing to have another child. Like a lot of what God was expecting of these exiles, like we still had to build houses and have babies and do those things that like
Yeah.
in the midst of a season that was really hard and
Yeah.
challenging, like continue to try to thrive and prepare ourselves for life after her eventually. And so yeah, that's probably the most recent season, the thing that comes to mind, the top of mind for me. But right, let's jump in a little bit more to Jeremiah. We left off with him at the time Jerusalem. It's kind of Jerusalem's last days, as Zedekiah and them are getting ready to be marched off to Babylon. And when we leave Jeremiah, I think he's in prison or he's locked up in some shape, form, or fashion at this point. And we pick up here in chapter 38, and he kind of gets moved from that jail to this cistern, right, where they kind of place him in this space where, mostly because they want him to leave from there to die,
Right.
And of course he's does not want that, and King Zedekiah kind of comes to his rescue at some point. But talk to me a little bit about what stuck out to you here in chapter 38.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the opening, right? That they heard these words that Jeremiah had said that God was going to say to them, like, hey, you're about to be taken, right? Whoever stays in this city will die by the sword. And it just seems real petty just from the beginning. It's like, hey, he's saying these things we don't like. He should die, right? I'm like, and these are the officials, right? But I think it was really interesting because it was saying like, oh, he's going to weaken the morale of the warriors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is when they come to King Zedekiah about this, they tell him, I think he should die. And King Zedekiah says to him, although he is a king, he says, here he is, he's in your hands, since the king can't do anything against you. And I just think it was just so interesting that like the king was so powerless in this instance, where like he kind of plays off of like, oh, I can't say anything against you guys anyways, you're gonna do what you want to do.
Yeah.
When ultimately we do see he has some still authority, right? Because he has him retrieved later on, but just initially just was kind of like, I wonder why he didn't at first. Like, maybe was he playing into like he didn't care about Jeremiah? Like, oh yeah. But he really had feelings towards him of like, maybe we shouldn't do this, but maybe he's just like a Saul heart and like just wanted to please the people, right? And please his officials. Whatever it was, I just thought it was interesting because I was like, what do you mean? You are the king.
Yeah.
Whatever the king says goes. And like, we see in Babylon, like, if you don't get the scepter extended to you, you die. Like, there
Yeah.
wasn't that type of authority that he withheld.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, definitely not. Nebuchadnezzar was also breathing down his throat a lot, but I was gonna say, I think, yeah, it is interesting how he just kind of essentially just tries to like wipe his hands of whatever happens, good or bad, to Jeremiah, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just won't be involved in it. But yeah, it was just, to me, it's just an interesting story because like I don't completely understand like the purpose or like why it's included. Like in the sense of, I mean, it tells more of Jeremiah's story. Jeremiah's the author. He probably thinks it's real important for us.
It
to
was.
know.
Like, I'm out here starving and dying.
Like I just want y'all to know how bad they treated me.
Mm-hmm.
But like in the large scheme of kind of God's judgment and like what will take place, like just knowing that the people were upset with what he said and ultimately tried to have him killed, we get that story a couple different ways in Jeremiah. But yeah, I mean, I think if anything, and I think it comes up a little bit later as well, like if anything just that jumps out to me is just the way God continues to spare Jeremiah. And again, I'm not sure why. We've talked about other prophets already in this book that didn't get that luxury, right? But just seeing that time and time again, that even as the people were against him and the people wanted to see him die, that God kept putting people in his path, right? So like in this case, it's
Cushite.
Yeah, right. Black man.
I was say, shout out for the people.
Yeah, but yeah, this Cushite, Abed Melech, right, who specifically kind of is the one that goes to pull him up. But even when we go back before, right, it was if you think about the time that they wanted to have him killed, but it was like there was somebody that just kind of had favor towards him, and I'm not gonna be able to pull this up that quickly. Hiakim. So
I knew it started with an H.
Chapter 26, right? So this is after Uriah specifically had died, right? They talked about that, but they were like, Hiakim, son of Shephem, supported Jeremiah, so he did not get handed over to the people, right? So it was interesting to me just how God kept putting people like in his pathway that ultimately would keep him from destruction, and just some of these people that came to spare him.
Yeah, and I think that was what stuck out to me too, because this Abed Melech, he wasn't an Israelite, right? Like, and we see right now that God is using whomsoever. Like, I don't care who it is.
Yeah.
Everyone is my pawn, right? Everyone I can use for my good or for evil or whatever. Like, everyone I can use, anyone. And so here the Lord just picks out this Cushite, and he uses him to bring justice to Jeremiah, right? So yeah, just like he is using Nebuchadnezzar right now, you know?
Yeah. It's good. Okay. Well, starting at 14, we kind of transition a little bit to where Zedekiah gets to meet with Jeremiah one more time, and he kind of asks his opinion on something, kind of seeks his advice. Jeremiah gives it to him, but he also is just like, man, don't tell anybody, about this conversation, because people are going to probably be upset with what you told me. What jumped out to you kind of in this second half of 38?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just trying to give him this like assurance of like, hey, like he's not going to do these things. You're concerned about these things, like don't be, right? Like, and I feel like he is continuing to plead with him to obey the Lord, right?
Yeah.
Like, please obey, like, and it will go well for you. But if you refuse to surrender, like, this is what the Lord has shown me what will happen. And it's crazy because, I mean, as we find out later on, like he's not surrendering, like he's not listening here, and it's troubling because it's like, why go and inquire of Jeremiah and have these conversations if you're not willing to like change or heed the advice or the wisdom that he has? It's because it seems like even in this conversation, like, oh, I'm going to like secretly go and ask Jemai because my heart wants to really know what God's will is, and like,
Yeah.
really gonna try here. But yeah, I don't know what the point of this was.
Yeah, and that's a theme. I don't want to go too far ahead. I feel like a lot of tomorrow's reading kind of covers a similar idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, so that's kind of going into tomorrow a little bit, but it is a similar theme that we see in general. The people is kind of seeking that advice and then kind of choosing. But I think like it does very much speak to kind of just human nature. To want to be told what we want to be told, right?
Hear what
Like
we want to hear. Yeah.
we all have that that person in our life, that friend, that family member, whatever, that we know they always they gonna co-sign on whatever we say. Right? They gonna hype us up. They gonna be like, ooh girl, you right. Ooh boy, yeah, definitely. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely, man. They tripping, they wilding. You know what I'm saying? Every time,
Look
like
at them.
yeah, like they gonna just all they want to do is hype you up and be your cheerleader.
Yeah.
And like those are the kind of people we typically like to go to, because we know when we really feeling out of pocket or we feel like we want to do something, like that's the people to go to. Hardest people to go to are the ones where like I'm like, yo, this is what's going on at work right now. This is how I feel. What do you think I should do? And they tell you to do the thing you don't want to do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, or that person's like, nah, go back and apologize.
Apologize for that email you wrote.
Yeah, and forgive them. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to do that. No, I want to tell them off so they know how I feel. Like, that's what I really want to do. Yeah, and so like I think that again, that's a common theme that we'll get a little bit more into tomorrow, but it seems like that was Zedekiah's thing as well. It's just like, let me ask, maybe if I ask him one more time, he'll change his tune.
Yeah.
He'll say something different.
Yeah.
But I just want to confirm. So yeah.
Yeah, but poor Jeremiah had to stay in the courtyard until the exile, well, the rest of them got captured, right? Like all this is going on. Can you just imagine though? Like I was thinking, like, how would I feel if like I had all this knowledge of what was going to happen, and yet I am trapped in the middle of the city, like bound. Like I can't even be free if I want to. And I feel like Jeremiah had some type of like, comfort that like the Lord was going to rescue him because he kept on giving promises to rescue other people that they at least obeyed, right? So like, Lord, I'm still obeying you. So I know you probably gonna come to my aid too, and I'm not gonna die by the sword. But I'm just sitting here watching all these other people disobeying you, and going down to like the fate that you destined for them, like because they want to be. And I can't do anything about it. I'm just locked up. Yeah. And hungry.
Yeah. No, it does. Yeah. They have a tough life, man.
Jeremiah.
Yeah. But I mean, to that point, right? You say you kind of locked up there. Chapter 39, we get kind of the seizure of Jerusalem by Babylon, right? So it happens in this 9th year of King Zedekiah.
Yeah.
And Nebuchadnezzar finally comes in to advance and lay siege to it. And it just kind of goes on almost for like 2 years, it feels like.
Yeah.
It started in the 9th year, took to the 4th month of the 11th year. That the city was kind of broken into, and all the officials of Babylon, they kind of entered in. So yeah, what from this first half of 39, where they kind of take over Jerusalem, was there anything in particular that stuck out to you here?
Yeah, well, the first thing that jumped out to me was how long it took. Because it made me think like, okay, well, maybe they weren't as broken down as you would think. Because at this point, I would think that Judah is just trash. It's King Zedekiah here and the rest of them in exile. Like, how hard could it be to like get in here and just demolish the city, right? But it still took, until then I'm thinking 2 years of defiance. Like 2 years of still not obeying and surrendering. Like, come on now. Like, that was a whole lot of time to continue to just be like, no, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
But then the next thing I thought about was when he started to flee. Then, why did you think this was going to work, Zedekiah? Why did you think it was going to work that you could like flee? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how we thought this was gonna work, but like you said, and then he could have had a better life, but he chose not to. So it's also hard to see what Jeremiah told him what could happen,
Yeah.
and then see what actually did happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think obviously what sticks out for me, well, I won't say obviously, but what sticks out for me is just, that what God said would happen happened.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, even just unfortunate, like, to your point, that they had options.
Yeah.
God gave them an option that would lead to life, that would lead to just kind of, not having to die by the sword, things of that nature.
Mhm.
And then, but like to watch Zedekiah in a position where not only is he blinded, but before he's blinded,
Yeah.
like to have to watch his sons killed before his eyes.
That I
right?
cannot
Like,
imagine.
yeah, to like see that happen, and then be blinded. But like that's the last thing you see. You know what I'm saying? The last thing that works
That's
with your eyes working is seeing that. And so like, but it so much of that is like, man, I brought this on myself. Like I feel like there is that point. I think that we all like at some point realize in our life of defiance, like if we ever get to a point of defiance of God, and again, my wish and desires that most people don't ever reach this point,
Right.
but many of us did reach that point.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a point where you get to the fact that you're like, you know what, I actually did this. Like I did this.
Yep.
And God was right. And I think there's the whole time Zedekiah and these people are probably holding out hope that Jeremiah is wrong.
Yeah.
I got this. What he's saying is not really gonna happen. We can beat these guys. We can hold them off. And I feel like the moment he watched his sons get slaughtered and have his eyes like blinded, that he was just like, okay, no, he was for real.
Yeah.
Like, I did this, and I am the reason this happened. I brought this on myself because I missed it.
Mm-hmm.
I missed what God said. I missed what he was saying. And I'm like, I think it's an unfortunate place to get to, but I think we've ran in there. Like for me, that was in the jail cell where I was just kind of like, you know what?
Yeah.
I brought this on myself.
Yeah.
Like I am not here because of anybody else but my own decisions, right? My own plan. And I feel like that's what it's reminded me of, was just watching that, like what God said would happen is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, you have nobody but to blame but yourself.
Yeah. Yep. I think we said we've all had some type of moment where it's like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
It's because I can't blame anybody but myself.
Yeah. But last thing that was interesting as we move into the end of 39.
Yeah.
I was interested in every time I read this, I confuse Nebuchadnezzar and Nebuzaradan.
Those were two tricky ones.
Yeah, their names are so close that if you're just skimming, you're gonna get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought it was interesting that they left like the poor people in the city, right? Like they just didn't take them at all, but kind of left them and gave them vineyards and fields. Like they didn't just leave them, but he gave them stuff that they probably didn't already have before.
Oh, I didn't think about that though.
And I don't know why I just thought it was so interesting, like that they kind of took care of them, and we'll see them referred to later on in scripture, kind of some of the stuff that they have. But I did think it was interesting. But at the end of 39, you talked about it before. Jeremiah prayed probably that he would be freed and have that opportunity, and he gets that here at the end of 39. What jumps out to you about how Jeremiah ends up free?
Yeah, I mean, there was just so much favor here. It was just like, listen, take him, look after him, don't harm him, but do whatever he says. Like, what in the world? It seemed like there was so much favor. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't have much more than that, but he's like choose where he can go and all the things. And so I think I was like, wow.
Yeah. And to your point, it looks like, God says that the reason this is happening is because, he trusted God, right?
Yeah.
Like the end of 39, that last verse 18, right? This is wise because you have trusted in me. You will retain your life like the spoils of war. But yeah, I did think it was we'll see kind of some other references here. It appeared that Nebuchadnezzar had like a level of respect and reverence for Jeremiah.
Yeah.
That was just very interesting. Like he says even later, like he knows Jeremiah declared this would happen against Judah, right? And so I don't know if like the word is spread or how it
Right.
got to Babylon.
Maybe the exile folks is talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly, but I did think it was interesting that like he had a level of reverence and understanding for who Jeremiah was and the message he was delivering, and specifically who it came from in God. So, which is just crazy. It was crazy that a pagan, essentially a Gentile, was
Right.
more aware that God was speaking through Jeremiah than even the people of Judah were.
Than his own people. That's what I was thinking. I was like, how do you have the ear of Nebuchadnezzar, who is conquering all these lands, and is, like you said, it's a pagan, but your own people.
Yeah.
And that's normally what it is. I mean, that's what Jesus ran into, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't please your own folks.
Yeah.
They're not gonna listen to you. They're gonna be, oh, that's just so and so talking
Yeah.
again. We grew up together.
Right. Well, I mean, you already kind of took us into 40 as far as just like him choosing to stay in Judah. He kind of had that choice, and it kind of said, "Hey, whatever you choose, kind of be with you." But we get later in 40 that like there is this man, Gedaliah, who is kind of put in charge by Nebuchadnezzar as kind of a governor or leader of this land. And yeah, man, we kind of start a story where between he and his adversary Ishmael here, who's the son of Nethaniah, kind of this back and forth, some things here. But let's start kind of here in 40.
Okay.
Gedaliah kind of encourages them to choose peace and not be afraid of serving, the Chaldeans and the Babylonians. Like, it's okay. Don't be afraid of them. Just go ahead and serve and live peacefully is kind of his advice to them that Ishmael is not particularly supportive of and fond of. What jumped out to you here in chapter 40?
Yeah, well, the first thing that kind of jumped out was in verse 12 for me. That when they heard that they had left a remnant in Judah and that Gedaliah was over them, that they all returned from the places that they were banished and came to Judah, right? And then like this harvest was great. So it's kind of like they were living. Like,
Yeah.
oh, Gedaliah, he's over everything. Like, let's come back and we drinking wine and we got the summer fruit going. So it did seem like this is the place that they wanted to be, right? Little did they know that was going to turn into drama, right? But it's, yeah, I don't know. It was some back and forth here that this guy is like, well, let me go and kill Ishmael for you, right? Like, let me go and kill Ishmael for you, and trying to warn Gedaliah here. And I feel like, I don't know, I didn't take this as like, was this God trying to like warn him, right? Like, or like give him a, an end. Like, should you have heeded it, or should you have taken the approach of like seeing the good in everyone, right? Like, no, like to me it was hard to tell the difference between the two. Like, should I just be trying to see the good in this person and do that, or should I be heeding this as like a warrior Lord? Because it's not like this was like a prophet coming, right? I think it would have been different if it was like Jeremiah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I think he's like, don't do that. What you're saying about him is a lie, and yeah, I kind of respected him for that. Like, that they're living, they're enjoying themselves, and he's not trying to like do a whole lot of bloodshed in this time.
Yeah, like you said, I'm very confused as to what maybe he could have done differently or should have done differently. Like how he could have been aware of what was going to happen and like take place, but not necessarily again respond with violence. Like, 'cause I don't think that's necessarily the answer either.
Right.
But I did think just the story in general like became the like first domino to fall for like some of these chapters we're going to run into, right? Because like Gedaliah's approach is essentially what Jeremiah encouraged the remnants to do, right? These people that are like left behind, like in Judah, which is like, yeah, just voluntarily serve Don't resist, those kind of things. But Ishmael, who again is not particularly fond of that, starts this fear in these people that, as we'll get to tomorrow, ultimately lead to them like wanting to run away to Egypt and some of this other stuff, right? So it becomes like the catalyst for some of what's going to continue to take place that ultimately rejects what God has said to them. So it's clear Ishmael is like not advancing the will of God, right. for these people. But again, how Gedaliah should have responded to it, that's, I don't know, kind of what the correct answer would have been. But you're right, he just completely missed it, because as we end on chapter 41 today, like he ends up getting killed by Ishmael. Ishmael comes and he kills him. He kills all those that were with him. Right. And I mean, even some others, like later on, there's some people who come and they had like their beard shaved and all this other stuff. And they come up and he's like, oh yeah, come see. Come see.
We partying.
Yeah, he's like, come on and see here. And then he slaughters all them as well, right? So Ishmael was really going ham. But what jumped out to you in 41 as we kind of close this out?
Well, just in terms of like imagery, like, forgive me, but this isn't my lifestyle in which I'm in around like a whole lot of like violence in this way, where folk is just getting slaughtered. But like, to me, I'm just like, how is this possible? Like, how is it possible that like just like 80 people here just get, I feel like we read this in the Bible sometimes. It's like, and 200 of the prophets were killed, or 100 priests were killed. Like, by one man. Like, how does this happen? Like,
yeah, there were no AK-47s in the Bible.
So we just like one by one in it, and I'm just like, how are we letting this happen? So to me, I'm just like reading this. I'm like, you were supposed to have some type of like, you were ruling in some type of way, right? Like, how is it that you just are getting God and everyone with you? It just, you can't be that. Maybe they was drunk. Like, maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the summer fruits. Like, maybe they just really was just out of it, and that's how.
It's possible.
It's very possible, because I'm just not understanding how this happens. But there's so much deception here.
Yeah, I said, I think, it's really interesting. Like you said, he fulfills what he said he was gonna do. He kills them. He kills all these individuals, and they say he's slaying so many people that like he fills up this cistern that like it was huge. They even refer back to like the king that built this cistern, King Asa, right? That was just like, y'all know the cistern we talking about. We talking about King Asa's cistern, and he built when he was kind of encountered that king of Israel. But like, I mean, that's, like you said, it's a lot of people that die, and this ultimately, like I said, leads to what we'll start talking about tomorrow. But again, just this catalyst for the fear that people have. But
can I mention verse 8?
Yeah,
where you about to go to?
Kind of the end here, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna stop real quick. So verse 8 threw me off because I was trying to figure out what Ishmael's motive was here. Like, why are we even doing this? You came out of nowhere. And I guess everybody wants to rule, right? Everybody wants power. But I thought it was interesting that there was just these people who just like, don't kill us because we have treasure in the field, right? Like, and I guess the treasure was this wheat, barley, oil, and honey and stuff. And that he didn't kill them. Yeah. Which I thought was interesting, because it was just like, is that all it took? Was like somebody just to like surrender up some goods to you? Like, why didn't Gedaliah have a choice? I don't know. It was interesting. I think that was the most, random verse to me. It was like, wait. Hold on, I have oil and honey. He's like, oh, really? Okay. You can go.
Yeah, you got something to offer me. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, I mean, we find out in verse 10 that he also kind of takes some captives, some hostages here, specifically the daughters of the king and some others. And man, Johanan shows up in verse 11. Yeah. And finally comes to the rescue, man, and saves them and frees them up until ultimately Ishmael's kind of on the run. But what jumps out to you kind of as the end of 41 before we close out today?
Yeah, no, I think you said it. Like, Yeah, he tried to. Did he run to like the Ammonites or something? I think he ran to the Ammonites and killed him and the men, the soldiers. I'm sorry, he brought back the men and the soldiers. And he's like brought everybody back. But yeah, yeah, it's just interesting. They made their way all the way to Egypt. This Egypt, guys, leave Egypt alone.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to that tomorrow. I know, but
yeah. But it says why, right? Like I said, that's why I say this is the catalyst. Verse 18 is kind of what I've been referring to here.
Yeah.
Well, 17 and 18. They left, stopping in Gur of Chimum, which is near Bethlehem, in order to make their way into Egypt, away from the Chaldeans. For they feared them because Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, had struck down Gedaliah, son of Ahikam, whom the king of Babylon had appointed over the land.
Right.
So essentially, the guy that Babylon had put in charge was murdered by Ishmael.
Killed. Yep.
And they're like, well, if Babylon put somebody in charge and they can't protect us, essentially, right?
We going to Egypt.
We run to Egypt. We're going to go high. Like I said, and this starts the conversation we'll have tomorrow specifically. But yeah, like I said, it started in 40. It was kind of this catalyst, these chain of bad decisions ultimately to some horrible ones that we'll see kind of happen tomorrow. Directly involving being disobedient, towards God. So, yeah. Anything else that we left out today?
No.
Okay. Like I said, we'll pick up at 42 tomorrow. The people kind of want some answers of what to do next, and so we'll see kind of what happens as they seek Jeremiah for that. But again, we appreciate you joining us today on the Vibes Daily Podcast. Come back and see us tomorrow. We are almost here at the end of Jeremiah. Just kind of a couple more days left of reading. But we pray again that this has been helpful for you. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Till then, take care.
Thank you for joining us for the Vibes Daily Podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or download our favorite, the Vibes Church app. Visit vibes.church/devoted for additional episodes, notes, details, and the latest merch. Join us next time as we continue our journey through the Bible. Take good care.